And we're back once again for our question and answer session with me, Alek Dincoff, and Steve Todd, founder of opensourcedworkplace.com. Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. So let's dive right in. What's new with Open Sourced Workplace? What's on the horizon? What's been going on this week? Traffic, flow? I want to hear it all.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously last week we spoke about traffic, where it was coming from, many page views and so on and so forth. We talked about I'd give LinkedIn a go just to test a few things. I posted a number of articles on LinkedIn on my open source workplace page. It's almost a tongue twister for me, right? It's kind of funny. And it's been quite interesting to see actually the traffic and how it's impacted. And pretty much what impact is had is almost zero. So from LinkedIn, I got 4 page views from LinkedIn. It's remarkable. So my page views for the last week, last week we were at like 330, this week we're at 346. So very, 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 very close. Again, hovering around that 1,400 page views per month, which is where I expect it to be. When I have a look at where that traffic came from, 56% is coming direct to the site. So I think it's people who know the site. Probably I have an impact on that as well. And I'm sure there's other people who actually frequent the site and they play into that. 32% comes from search. So that search number is getting up a little bit. It's got a little higher each week. But if I have a look at Facebook, 20 page views came from Facebook, 4 from LinkedIn, 2 from Twitter. Pinterest 8, which I find really interesting. Pinterest all of a sudden there's like 8 page views. It's really small, but it's like I have no idea where that came from. So it's kind of interesting. But again, it goes back to all that time, energy, and effort I was spending on managing all those individual platforms with the hope and expectation that would drive traffic to my site. Really, it's so insignificant that I actually even wondering why bother. And I'm sure other people have experienced the same thing. But it's just like the proof is in the pudding. And I'll continue to monitor, continue to track, and continue to see, just to see if that changes. But again, I always go back to why would LinkedIn or Facebook push somebody off their platform where they can no longer receive ad revenue. So you just have to look at it from that perspective. What's interesting as well is a lot of the articles. So the number 1 article is still 100 Ways to Be Productive. It's still the number 1 article. There are 4 recent posts, so 4 articles that come out last week are the most common. And I suspect that my writers, when I send them the link, are sharing it and sending it to their friends and so on and so forth. So they're coming that way. And then there's 4 older articles that are in the top 10 as well. So again, it goes back to that search. And some of the search are like questions that are coming up. What is an agile workforce? That was one of the top searches. So again, this goes back to, the shift that I'm trying to make. Rather than writing content that I think is interesting, sort of focus on the content that's not interesting, just playing. Just focus the content on asking questions, answering questions that I think people are going to be asking Google and other search platforms for. So we'll see what happens. We'll see where that goes over time. And again, I sort of have in my head that I think it'll be June, July next year before traffic really has matured and search really has taken on. So as I mentioned last week, I've had 14 writers. It's now down to 13. And it's again, we talked about, you asked the question, how many writers do I think I'll be able to retain? And I sort of said, if I can keep a third, I'd be satisfied with that. So we're down to 1. There are a number who have yet to submit their first articles. Some of them are very ambitious and are looking to provide 4,000 word articles, which is, that's where you're looking and you're hoping to provide a complete guide, view on and a really in-depth analysis on a particular subject matter. So some of those I don't expect to come in that quickly. And to be honest, my approach when it comes to the writers is I don't put expectations or deadlines. I just don't do that. A lot of people are going to be self-motivated and they'll choose the time and effort when suits them to actually do their writing. I have people who turn articles around relatively quickly. And obviously as soon as they're done and they meet the criteria and I think it's up to par to publish, then I publish and away they go with the next one. So it's quite interesting. It's an interesting process.
Well, that's good. You're weeding through the crowd.
Yeah.
In regards to traffic, I'm surprised with so much business orientation that your website works around. LinkedIn, I think I would have thought LinkedIn would have had much higher views, but hey, you learn, you live.
Yeah. And sort of to put the context on that. So what LinkedIn does, and they're clever, right? So they tell you how many impressions. So whenever I post an article, it gives me metrics on how many impressions. Now, many impressions isn't that's how many people clicking through. That's how many people are going to have it show on their feed. So it's a very different dynamic. But I would have thought LinkedIn would have provided a lot more traffic. I thought Facebook wouldn't have been that much of a player anyway, but LinkedIn for sure.
All right, time to double down on Pinterest. No.
Clearly, right?
Oh man. So, speaking of writers and articles, have you read anything within this last week that you're implementing in the workforce today, or maybe your website? Any article that really stands out to you, or have you not had the free time?
No, there's actually been a couple of articles that are really interesting to me. There's one that was written on the impact of EMF Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on employee health. So as more and more technology is deployed through the workplace, as we put more sensors around our offices to better track and provide more solutions for employees, is that having a detrimental effect on their health? We think about Wi-Fi, those tall buildings in New York City. For you to get a signal up there, the telephone companies are having to put repeaters and amplifiers into the buildings. So is that going to have a long-term benefit or detriment to an employee's health? So there's an article put together this week that discussed that. It's sort of a bit of a taboo subject, I feel, in the actual industry, because, if I look at it from my own personal perspective, right? When I'm at home, I'm sitting in this room. I have my, Mac, my phone. I have an iPad. I have the Wi-Fi router in the corner. Cell phones around me. I operate in that environment. Now, I don't ever anticipate going to a workplace and that changing. But where does the responsibility shift? And then how does that replay and sort of work into an employee's experience or expectations in an office environment? I think it's a tough trade-off. I don't know where the answer lies, but no one really talks about it within the industry. So it's a very interesting article. It goes into a lot of the side effects that can happen. Some of them are things we know and we just continue to do anyway, right? Where do you put your phone? What impact does that phone have on, if you put it in your chest pocket, if you put it in your pant pocket, for gentlemen. Ladies, I think, are a little different because they often have a purse and they keep it a little bit distant. But also then, Bluetooth headphones, whenever you're using those, you're holding the phone to your head. What impact does that have? From an office environment, whenever we want to go away from desk phones to having everybody on cell phones, then what does that impact on employees' health and long-term health? There's a lot of studies there's not that many studies, to be honest. It's not really an area that's been deep in research. There has been some research. There's also a book called Dirty Electricity that I've read that sort of speaks a lot to this. And this was a study done over many years. And the study in those books, the studies that focused on was, cell towers being put close to schools, and then what do the children have on cancer outcomes and so on and so forth with those schools. But that's the one article that really stood out for me this week. It was something that I'd anticipated seeing because I knew it was in the working for a number of weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see where we go with that one.
Yeah, well, that's a study that takes a long time to develop. It's not something that you can get information for overnight. So
right.
All right. Speaking of articles, I read one this week. It's Understanding Smart Buildings and 12 Awe-Inspiring Marvels. It's actually on open source right now. Yeah. Got to plug our own website, right?
There you go. I love
yes.
it.
But it actually, as I was reading it, it gave me a few questions. And I thought I should share that with you because with your building knowledge and your experience on the NASDAQ, what is your favorite smart building feature? And I know you have experience in the US and the UK. What other countries do you have experience with when it comes to smart buildings? I just want to get a feel for where your answers are going to come from. Is it all over the world, specifically to those two? I'd like to know. Lastly, it's a three-pronged question. What country or countries do you think are winning the race in smart buildings, as it were?
Man, that's a loaded question. And it's like, how long have you got, But they're all great questions. And the things that people are really interested in. And, my experience is somewhat limited in the sense of understanding and really seeing and walking the different markets because, typically whenever you do lease renewals in various countries, that's whenever you really dig in and see what developments are in. So my focus will be, and I'll limit it to just the US and the UK because that's really where a lot of my experience is at the moment. I will get to Sydney soon, but not just yet. So let's start with my favorite feature. My favorite feature is always going to be something that aids and helps employees in the workplace, and also what helps management make better decisions. And for me, it's always going to be about sensors and understanding how people move and use workplace, and also sensors that actually provide and help employees find meeting rooms, book meeting rooms, and things like that. Those are the real. They're not simple. I'm going to call them simple, but they're not simple to deploy. But these are tools that they're sort of in the marketplace are just getting better and better every year. So for me, it would absolutely be sensors internally to sort of measure and track how people move through the buildings, how conference rooms are being used, and also allowing employees the ability to book rooms easily. And I could just keep going on with so whenever you then get into the conference room, okay, so then how do you make it that the conference starts immediately? And you don't have to wait for people for 5 minutes. Okay, I'm here, and so on and so forth. How do you just because that's the biggest time waster when it comes to a meeting. And I think that's where getting those meetings is where you can actually save so much time and energy for everybody in the organization. The big differences I would see between, if I compare the New York City market that I know very well and the London market that I'm getting to know very well, I would say the London market is streets ahead of the New York market. I think a lot of the buildings in the UK are building to a standard, and the base standard seems to be a lot higher than New York. From a safety perspective, I think New York is way ahead, but we're talking specifically about the smart buildings and so on and so forth. And I think from that factor, that's been built into the UK buildings much, much more than the US buildings. Now, that could simply be the timing of when I'm looking, and there's just different ways to look at it, right? So in the New York market, there is one building up at the moment called One Vanderbilt, probably the most advanced building in New York, and it's been built right beside Grand Central Station. But when I look in the UK and London specifically, there are probably a number of buildings that would be a direct competitor to that, in a sense of the smart technology, and what it's looking to achieve from a smart building. Now, there's the buildings that gets delivered. Then there are the tenants within the building who then take that on to another level. Some of the really smart buildings and smart tenants that are being deployed at the moment are quite phenomenal. I've seen what Citigroup are doing with their building in New York. I know what Time Warner Inc. are looking to do in their new building as they move into Hudson Yards. They're deploying, I want to say 60,000 sensors within their building, within their space, to allow them to manage it efficiently, to allow them to, I mean, when I say managing efficiency, it's just like from an infrastructure perspective, also from a utilization and occupancy perspective. I mean, Time Warner, if you think about it, CNN, Time Inc., all their different brands, all in one building, such a huge ordeal, and what they're doing with smart buildings and really enhancing the experience for the employees, but also management of the building itself. So there's different ways to take that structure, whether it's an actual building or a tenant within a building. And obviously, the bigger the tenant you are in the building, then the more say you can actually have. The smaller tenant, the smart technology may not make as much sense as what those larger tenants are, because they can really find cost efficiencies in utilizing a lot of the smart technologies.
Very good. Very good. Well, hopefully the U.S. picks up the pace. We'll get there. But that's good. That's good insider knowledge. It's good to see where things are, where everyone stands. And good luck when you do end up, you said Australia, correct? So
I'm hoping.
All right.
Someone's got to go from the team, so we'll see.
Well, perhaps you'll spend a few days on the beach while visiting, if you ever get sent there. Other than that, tips, tricks, things you're implementing in your daily life, something you just want everyone to know about? Any closing thoughts? I could keep going on, but I'll stop here.
No, I know you could. No, no real tips that spring to mind this week. No. Well, one thing I've done, and again, this is where you try to close it off, and I always throw one more thing at you. So I've while I've been trying to add resources through Upwork, I'm also thinking, well, if I'm prepared to go to Upwork, would I be prepared to set up a location and bring writers to me, college writers to me, from the local area? Where I live in Long Island, there are a number of universities very close by. So I've been trying to sort of think through, how could I work it where I would, on a weekend, bring in 3, maybe 4 shifts, 3-hour shifts of 5 writers to come in and sort of give them an overview of the type of writing that I'm looking to do with open source. And could I then train them to write the content that I'm looking for? So to that, I've went on to various platforms, and it's quite hard to actually advertise and get to students. The universities obviously have their programs, and you have to go through the approval process. So I've tried to go down that road with several universities. Some have said no, some are asking for more information, and that's fine. Then there are some of the ones that I have to say are maybe sketchy, if that's a word that gets used in the US, in a sense where you're not quite sure how legitimate it is. It's not Craigslist, but it's collegehelpers.com, something like that. So I put something on there, not really getting too much traction, but in essence, I think I'd really love to give students an opportunity to actually write for a site and actually, be able to do something and earn some additional income on a weekend. So I'm trying to put that together. We'll see if it gets wheels. Craigslist obviously is an option, but you never really, I don't know. I always feel skeptical whenever you go that route. I don't know if that's the right approach. Maybe other opportunities or avenues that I could maybe try. But yeah, that's something I'm thinking about.
So, yeah, something does come to mind. Whether it works or not, I'll leave that up to you to discover. But you have these universities that are close with you, and don't limit yourself just to those universities unless you're really trying to get those collegiate students in to see you and work with you, so you can kind of mold them and they can grow with you.
Mm-hmm.
You can look for a teacher directory, find every English professor, email them directly and say, do you have any brilliant students that have an interest in business? I would be happy to pay them to write for me or with me. Do a workshop so they can get on in real life experience and get paid for doing it, just trying to help the kids out. Sometimes professors will say yes, and others will completely delete your email. Just depends on the professor. Getting things in front of college students is hard. If you are free and decide instead of doing a run, you want to do a walk, go to the college campus and find their job board. Easier said than done, depending on the college campus. Not necessarily a job board, but almost a current events, an event poster where people slap things up. Come to our show, we're having a meeting, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you can put something on those boards. Or if there's any dormitories that are school funded, a lot of times each dormitory has little boards just like that, where you would have to talk to a residence hall associate of some sort and say, this is what I'm offering. Is there a hall that specifically caters to people in writing or English? And the school will vary.
No, I definitely want to try it. I want to pursue it. Again, I'm always about, trying and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And I think it would be and also it's an opportunity to give to kids to try something. But I really want to pursue it. We'll just see how it rolls out.
Well, if anything, I would say maybe try the emails before going to a college campus. If College Helpers or College Help, whatever the website you mentioned was, if that works, then great. I hope to hear great results perhaps next week when we speak.
I'll definitely give you an update.
All right. Now, I would close it out, but just in case, is there something you want to throw, anything else you want to throw in?
No, I'm good. I'm good for now, I think.
All right. Well, in that case,
thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you, viewers, for watching this. We're back here every Monday, same time, same place. Like, share, subscribe, comment on how awesome or horrible we are. Either way, we'd love to have your feedback, and we hope you'll join us again. Thanks. We'll see you next week.